Why compost? Decomposition happens naturally in the environment. It is part of the nutrient cycles. For example, leaves that fall decompose and provide nutrients to the forest the following spring. Composting is an easy and inexpensive way to provide nutrients to the plants in your garden as an alternative to purchasing fertilizer. Compost improves the physical, chemical, and biological properties of soil. The decomposed organic matter in compost improves soil structure as well as nutrient and water holding capacity of soil. The beneficial organisms present in compost produce plant-stimulating or pathogen-fighting compounds. Compost is also a good waste reduction technique. What to compost? Different composting methods have various criteria for what can be included in the compost pile. For your basic school compost bin, the general rule is to put in shredded tree leaves, grass clippings, kitchen scraps, and wood shavings. You want to avoid putting in meat scraps that cause odor and attract rodents, treated wood which contains heavy metals, and plastic and glass which do not biodegrade. The combination of brown, high carbon containing material like wood shavings are mixed with low carbonaceous material like kitchen scraps to provide the proper carbon to nitrogen ratio for microbes to eat and grow. Composting methods. The compost must contain sufficient oxygen for the microbes that cause decomposition to perform respiration. It must be aerated by mixing the contents regularly. The pile also needs to be big enough to generate enough heat to go through the different phases of decomposition. The compost can be tested with a thermometer to see if it reaches at least 50 to 75 degrees Celsius. It must be mixed frequently when the temperature gets this high as to maintain the oxygen supply and ensure the material is evenly heated. The compost pile needs to be kept slightly moist for the microbes and may need to be watered to make it more moist or turned to dry it out. Compost observations. Use your senses of smell, sight, and touch to observe if your compost is decomposing properly. If it is not aerated enough, it will smell putrid due to anaerobic decomposition. If you pick it up in your hand and squeeze, it should feel moist but not be dripping. You should be able to see many microorganisms in your compost, including earthworms and sow bugs. There will also be many you can't see, such as bacteria and fungi. All of these organisms are hard at work decomposing the plant material into humus, which will promote plant health when added to your garden. When and how to use compost. Use the compost after it has reached its highest temperature and has cooled down to less than 40 degrees Celsius. Make sure all the material in the compost is decomposed and no longer recognizable. You can add it to your soil and mix it in before planting seeds, or put it at the bottom of your pit when transplanting. It can also be turned into a tea that is diluted for regular watering. I will demonstrate how to make compost tea in a following video. Experiment and curriculum integration. One possible experiment that can be conducted using your compost is carried out in the following way. Ensure children understand what is allowed in compost and why. In your classroom, have separate containers for compost, recycling, and garbage, and use the containers for a certain amount of time. Have children measure and record how much compost versus recycling versus garbage their classroom produces. Have children make a bar graph or pie chart depicting how much of each waste they produce. Discuss where each of these waste products comes from and ends up, and the consequences to the environment of having an excess of certain waste products, like plastic bags. Discuss a strategy to reduce the amount of one or more waste products that your classroom produces. This experiment integrates prescribed learning outcomes from the processes of science and life science for kindergarten to grade 4s as outlined in the BC school curriculum. Examples of PLOs that are covered include classifying objects, measuring objects and events, classifying living and non-living things, and determining how personal choices and actions have environmental consequences.